is Today As It Happened. Good Friday evening to you. I'm Stephanie Liebergen here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories from the day. From the Senate rejecting a Republican-led effort to avoid a government shutdown at the end of the month to the CDC advisory panel's vote on COVID-19 vaccine recommendations. Let's jump right in. Hamas says Israel has lost any chance of getting its hostages back. In a statement, Hamas said that it moved hostages throughout neighborhoods in Gaza City because of Israel's recent ground offensive. Officials believe the U.S.-designated terrorist organization still has 40 hostages in Gaza, kidnapped nearly 2 years ago. Only 20 are believed to still be alive. Israel's recent military offensive has faced pushback, including from the families of hostages, who fear their loved ones are now in harm's way.
They are always in our thoughts. We will do everything to avoid harming them. We operate responsibly. We operate in full coordination with the commands and with the relevant intelligence bodies. We work with intelligence methods. And again, we will do everything. I appreciate the family's concern. We will do everything to avoid harming the hostages.
Yesterday, the U.S. vetoed a draft United Nations Security Council resolution calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza. It would have also required the release of the hostages being held by Hamas. The other 14 countries on the Security Council voted in favor of the resolution. The U.S. says it voted no because the resolution failed to condemn Hamas or recognize Israel's right to defend itself.
Say it loud, say it clear.
Immigrants are welcome here.
Say it loud, say it clear.
Immigrants are welcome here.
More than a dozen people, including some elected officials, were arrested while protesting conditions at a New York City immigration holding facility. A group involved in the protest says officials were arrested while trying to inspect holding rooms at the government building. The officials were trying to ensure government compliance with a ruling that requires U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to eliminate poor conditions and overcrowding at holding facilities. European and NATO officials say Russian military jets have violated Estonia's airspace. International correspondent Will Denslow is in Brussels following this for us this morning. So, Will, what exactly do we know?
Well, this is rather breaking news, but a concerning development as far as both the European Union and NATO is concerned amid these reports that Russian jets temporarily entered Estonian airspace. The context is absolutely crucial on this one. This comes amid several weeks where there have been reports that first in Poland, then in Romania, Russian drones violated their airspaces as well. As a response, we know that NATO is taking action. French jets have been sent to the Polish border as part of the so-called Eastern Sentry. So certainly efforts by the NATO military alliance to bolster its defences on Europe's eastern flank bordering the likes of Belarus and, of course, with Russia. As far as the EU is concerned, well, the timing absolutely significant as well. Just this day, just a few hours before these reports of this violation came to light, the European Commission announced this 19th round of sanctions on Russia. Now, what this sanctions package includes: more stringent measures on Russia's shadow fleet, these tankers that are allegedly used to circumvent existing restrictions on Russian oil exports, more clampdowns on its financial systems, crypto platforms targeted for the very first time, as well as third parties accused of getting technology onto the battlefield to support Russia in its war with Ukraine. Also, incredibly significantly as well, the European Commission has proposed moving up the timeline when it comes to the bloc weaning itself off of Russian liquefied natural gas. That, of course, as we know, has been a key ask from the Trump administration.
International correspondent Will Denslow in Brussels for us. I'm sure we'll continue to keep our eyes on this story as we learn more details. Will, thank you very much. Mississippi police say an autopsy shows that a black student found hanging from a tree at Delta State University died by suicide. The 21-year-old student was discovered on Monday. An autopsy was done by the state medical examiner's office. Police say they are still investigating the student's death and they are sharing information with the FBI. We know more this morning about a shooting that left 3 police officers dead in Pennsylvania. A prosecutor says a suspected stalker hid inside his ex-girlfriend's home and ambushed police when they came to arrest him on Wednesday. Beyond the 3 officers who were killed, 2 others were seriously injured, and the suspect was shot and killed by police. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
We've got a ton of local businesses that I've reached out. It kind of started just with me and all my friends compiling all the money that we could just scrape up out of our bank accounts to buy as many flowers as we could get.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. Authorities say they have found remains they believe are Travis Decker, an ex-soldier wanted in the depths of his 3 daughters in Washington state. The local county sheriff's office says preliminary findings suggest the remains belong to Decker. The 32-year-old had been wanted since June when a deputy found his truck and the bodies of his 3 daughters at a campground outside Leavenworth. The girls were 9, 8, and 5 years old. An autopsy determined they died of suffocation. Hyundai is recalling more than 500,000 Palisade SUVs because seat belts may not latch properly. The recall covers model years 2020 through 2025, and the company says seat belt buckles in the driver, passenger, and second row window seats could fail to secure. Hyundai has received more than 500 reports of the problem, but no crashes or injuries have been reported. Dealers will inspect and replace faulty buckles at no cost. Heating your home this winter will cost more money. The average household is expected to pay $976 to keep warm this season. That's nearly an 8% increase from last year. The National Energy Assistance Directors Association says the jump comes from higher natural gas and electricity prices. Dozens of utility companies have already raised rates or plan to do so. Meanwhile, federal assistance for utility bills has stayed at $4 billion over the last 2 years, and it's unlikely to increase. Texas A&M University President Mark Welsh is resigning after political backlash over a classroom incident. A student confronted an instructor about gender ideology during a children's literature course. Video of the exchange went viral on social media. Governor Greg Abbott and other Republican lawmakers called for the instructor's firing. Welsh fired the instructor and demoted 2 administrators, but faced continued criticism. The fired instructor is now appealing her termination. It's been more than a week since a shooter killed conservative activist Charlie Kirk on Utah Valley University's campus. In the days since the attack, a group of students went to work organizing an event to bring people together with love and compassion. They're calling it Hugs, Not Hate. Scripps News Group's Tina Giuliano is live in Orem, Utah with more on this event. So Tina, tell us, what are organizers planning to do for their fellow students?
Yeah, good morning. I mean, we're seeing just so much support really pour out here at Utah Valley University. And this, grassroots organization here started by students, and they're handing out flowers to all the students that are coming into class today. And so I have kind of the brains behind the operation here. Lane, tell us, what's the plan for today? How has it been going?
Yeah, I mean, I could not be happier with the way things have been going right now. I just took a walk around the campus, and seeing as many students as there are just carrying flowers with them, it kind of just means the world to me. And it's really shown me that I am able to have that outreach. Just a week ago, I mean, I would have never thought in a million years that I would be able to kind of put together what I have put together and just have that outreach to try to just support and love the community and UVU as a whole. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, and so tell us, what the inspiration was. We saw the tragedy from last week, and so putting this together, what kind of went behind this?
Absolutely. So last week I was here at the event, and it was just a pretty tough situation for me. It was a tough couple of days, but because of the friend group that I kind of have supporting me, they really just helped me get through those kind of dark moments. But I know not every student or here at school has those same support groups. So I tried, me and my co-founder, Zach Mitchell, we've tried to just think of an idea of how can we give back and how can we just try to spread this message of love and compassion just towards our fellow students and community, faculty, just everyone, not only here at UVU, but also Orem and the just surrounding places.
And so you got the flowers, you're handing them out to students, and these flowers are local businesses have supported you.
Absolutely. So we've got a ton of local businesses that I've reached out. It kind of started just with me and all my friends compiling all the money that we could just scrape up out of our bank accounts to buy as many flowers as we could get. And it's kind of just led to this, a ton of local businesses that I've reached out to and have reached out to me going, how can we help support this effort? This is something that we want to get behind. Like right now, I think we kind of live in a moment where there's so much kind of sadness and just really negative emotions. And just any way that I can try to turn that around. And flowers are one of those things where I believe they kind of do just have a very special thing where it can help lift people up, and that's our main goal for today, is just to try to lift people up. And you know, when we started this, I just wanted to have those students know how loved they are, and we are pushing right now to have UVU set aside one day a semester to have a day of service where they don't do any school things or anything like that, and all we do is just serve our community. And we've been working with like Governor Cox and Congressman Burgess Owens to try to push this not only here at UVU, but statewide at all of the different campuses, with the end goal having it go from state to state, seeing what we're doing and applying it themselves.
Yeah, so you guys want to make Hugs Not Hate just a thing that is not only at UVU, but across Utah and across the state.
Absolutely. So right now we're in the process of making this a full-blown nonprofit organization, which allows us to go state to state to just bless the different communities, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's our goal, to just bless the people around and to just share that message of love and compassion to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And then next Thursday, you're going to be doing this again for the students, right?
Absolutely. So we just wanted to try to reach as many different students here on campus. So today we've been passing out flowers since 8 o'clock, and already we have 10,000 flowers for next Thursday that we're going to be passing out to the students as well. So it's just one of those simple but meaningful messages that we've just tried to spread amongst everyone. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lane. And so like you said, next Thursday, they're going to be having more flowers here for the students. And we've been seeing throughout the day just all the smiles on people's faces as they walk through the campus and have a flower in hand, and really being able to brighten their day like this after the tragedy that happened here just last week. Sending it back to you, Stephanie.
Scripps News Group's Tina Giuliano really explaining how one person can really make a big difference and really start a movement. Tina, live in Orem, Utah, thank you so much for bringing that to us this morning. Up next on Today As It Happened.
And if they post something that's controversial, which right now the way the country is, half of the people are going to agree and half of the people are going to disagree, therefore making almost any political opinion controversial, is it worth it?
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen here with your daily rundown of today's top stories. Flooding and mudslides buried roads and damaged homes in several Southern California communities. A major mudslide in Oakland trapped cars and downed power lines Thursday afternoon. Aerial video showed the massive slide swept through a neighborhood after coming down the hill. The mudslides also affected Forest Falls and Potato Canyon in San Bernardino County. CAL FIRE is urging people in those areas to stay out or shelter in place. The surge of mud and debris covered roadways and compromised power lines. Google is partnering with a nonprofit to fight the online spread of non-consensual intimate images. The company is working with Stop NCII to help victims create digital fingerprints of intimate images. Those fingerprints are then shared with platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and OnlyFans to prevent re-uploading without requiring the victims to report each incident. Google is currently testing the technology and expects to fully launch in the next few months. After the shooting death of Charlie Kirk, Utah's governor called social media a cancer. Add that to concerns about TikTok, and the bad publicity for social media just keeps piling up. But one author wants to change your view. The book is called Flip Your Script: Owning Your Story and the Positive Power of Social Media. It gives readers a guide on how to leave a positive social impact. So joining us now is Emmy Award-winning journalist, entrepreneur, and author Christy Peel. Christy, thank you for joining us and sharing a bit about your book with us this afternoon and your expertise. So how do you break through the negative noise on social media to try to make a positive difference?
Thank you for having me. In the light of what's happening in the world, these are the kind of conversations we should be having to think about how social media can be used for good instead of the way that many of us log in and see how it is being used right now. And it's full of negativity and misinformation and hate. So the first thing to do is to reframe how you show up to social media platforms and think about really reflecting before you react. And think about the social media platforms that you're on. You have an opportunity and a responsibility to bring positivity and purpose instead of thinking about logging on to change someone else's mind.
So you have this quote in your book: in any line of work, in any walk of life, at any age, your story matters. So talk to us about how you live this through your social media.
Each of us have our own personal experiences. We have our own insight. We have our own stories. And when we show up on social media and share those things with the purpose and the intent of helping someone else, it changes the whole conversation. So when someone, even with a different political ideology or a different religion, shares their story, how they got to believe what they believe, it's very different than getting onto social media and spewing hate. So when I think about professionals and the leaders that I work with all the time, and we work with at my company, Media Minefield, we're teaching them how to show up on social media and share insight for the purpose of helping and inspiring and educating other people. It makes a huge difference.
Well, the news of the day is what drives what people talk about online, but sharing opinions on social media, we've seen especially controversial ones, can land people in hot water, have gotten people fired from jobs. So is there a way for people to share their emotions and share their thoughts without putting a target on their back or putting their job at risk?
I think it's all about the audience. When a leader is showing up on social media, their audience are their stakeholders. And if they post something that's controversial, which right now, the way the country is, half of the people are going to agree and half of the people are going to disagree, therefore making almost any political opinion controversial, is it worth it? They are representing their company, they're representing their brand, and it's a very big risk. If they have opinions that they want to share with people, I encourage them, start a text with a friend, go out to coffee with someone, call someone who you trust, talk to your therapist. But just spewing information on social media can have pretty significant and damaging, as you mentioned, we've recently seen consequences for people's careers.
Well, we hear all the time about what we see on Instagram and on TikTok. It's not real life. You're seeing only the best photos that someone has to share, only the photos that have gone through a filter. So how do you stay authentic, but also stay away from being negative?
It's a really great question. And the number one thing that we teach people and that I talk about in the book is to be two things: authentic and accurate. And where those two things come together, that is where excellent content and where storytelling can happen. So it's just critical to show up you want to be filtered, right? I teach people in the book, we all know how to do this. We know how to edit our stories. If you show up for dinner and your kids ask, hey, how was your week? You're going to have a different answer than if an employee asks, or a coworker, or your rabbi, or your priest, or your pastor. So it's really important to show up on social media and to think about who the audience is and how to be authentic there and not be damaging.
Well, there is, no matter how hard people try, at least right now, the environment on social media, there's a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of controversial opinions out there. Is there something that you recommend people do to kind of try to shield themselves from negativity? Should they be unfollowing people, or is there a better way to try to keep their own individual social media feeds more positive?
The word that you use that's so important is individual. Each of us has the opportunity and the responsibility to curate our social media community as it's beneficial to us. So I know people in my network who have decided to log off for a bit because they just aren't at a place to take it. There are other people who the right answer might be to remove some followers that are causing negative thoughts or taking them down a path that is negative. When we work with leaders, a lot of our work is on LinkedIn, and controversial opinions, in my opinion, don't belong on LinkedIn. So if you're finding a lot of negativity on TikTok, perhaps it's time to take a break from that platform for a while and look at a different platform through a different lens, where perhaps you're not feeling negative or tempted to make some kind of comment that can have significant implications for your personal life and your professional life.
Social media is something I think a vast majority of us use, but I think a lot of us would agree that it would be nice if it was a little more uplifting and a little more positive sometimes. Author of Flip Your Script, Christy Peel, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Even to this day, when asked directly if he actually knew that people were being abused, that women were abused during that time, he would not admit that he knew that information and actually refused to acknowledge the victim.
And later,
what we saw on the floor makes it clear the Republicans are following Donald Trump's orders to the letter. Stonewall, scapegoat, shirk responsibility. They're doing exactly what Trump told them to do. And then they skip town. No plans, no talks, no urgency.
you're watching Today As It Happened, Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day, so let's jump right in.
Former U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta is on the hot seat on Capitol Hill today. Members of Congress are asking Acosta about that plea deal cut with Jeffrey Epstein back in 2008. It allowed Epstein to avoid a federal trial by sending him to prison for 13 months on state prostitution charges involving minors. FBI Director Kash Patel, who was also on the hot seat this week, testified that Acosta's deal, in his words, was the original sin of the Epstein case. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live for us in New York. And Alex, this is taking place behind closed doors, but what, if anything, are we hearing about Acosta's testimony today?
Well, we are learning a little bit about this testimony. As Alex Acosta walked into the interview today, he did not take any questions from reporters. Democrats spoke to reporters, though, on a lunch break today. It is expected the interview to wrap up around 4 p.m., but so far they say they do not find Acosta credible. They say that they believe that he is part of a cover-up involving the Trump administration, including the Department of Justice, and they say that, if anything, he botched this investigation. Listen.
Mr. Acosta, at least to us in this deposition, essentially said he didn't have faith in the victims, their stories, and their ability to tell their own story and their own testimony, which is deeply disturbing to all of us sitting in there. Not just that, but it seems like Mr. Acosta really had no idea about what was going on in his own office during this investigation, during the deliberation on this, on what is the most high-profile case that his office handled during that time period.
And Del, the Democrats also relayed that Acosta wouldn't admit to making a sweetheart deal, that he didn't believe it was a sweetheart deal. And if anything, they say he stands by that decision. Now, going into this interview this morning, we also heard from Chairman James Comer, who said that he wanted to ask Acosta about the time leading up to making that deal, what made him make that decision, particularly because survivors have been so vocal about the fact that they came forward over and over again, and that they say that the government never listened to them. Listen to what the chairman had to say.
We've expressed to the victims it would be helpful if they would give us some names of some people. We'll look at the bank records. That was one of the things the attorney said. Look at the bank violations, the bank records, and you will find potentially some names. Right now, there haven't been any names that have emerged other than press reports. The documents haven't showed that. That doesn't mean there aren't any.
Comes as we are on the heels of that incredibly heated Oversight Committee hearing earlier this week with FBI Director Kash Patel, where he said that he had not found any connection that Epstein trafficked women to other people. Now, that is something that many people disagree, of course, including the survivors who have been admitting for years that they say they were trafficked to other men through Jeffrey Epstein. One Congressman, Thomas Massie, who has really been at the forefront of this, calling out the FBI director on this during the hearing. I want to remind our viewers what he said.
According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada.
And Massie asked Director Patel if he had seen these 302 documents, which are essentially documents that summarize interviews. He was very evasive about responding to this, saying only that he is asking his other agents to look through anything related to the Epstein file. So there's still clearly many questions also for Patel to answer.
You know, every time Massie talks, I always have to look to see if there is an R next to his name. He is a Republican. Some of the survivors are also reacting to the testimony from the FBI Director Kash Patel. What are they saying?
You know, it's interesting what you say about Massie, particularly because this was a Republican issue. Kash Patel is somebody who campaigned on this or has been talking about this for years, saying that there was a cover-up. Republicans have been talking about this, and now it's been a little bit more difficult as we've seen the president call this a Democratic hoax. But we heard from the survivors just last night, not all of them, but a group of these survivors calling out the FBI, saying that these documents need to be released not only to the House Oversight Committee, but also to the public so that everybody can see them. I want to read you a little bit of this 2-page document where they said, Director Patel's testimony raises more questions than answers. For years, he has railed about the incompleteness of previous investigations. He's right about that. Previous investigations, they say, were indeed incomplete. So what is his plan to make sure that a thorough and unbiased investigation is conducted at last? He seems to acknowledge that the FBI FD 302 reports naming other men to whom Epstein-Maxwell victims were trafficked are real. So they're calling him out. They're calling Patel out for these last statements. Because again, Patel has been incredibly critical of previous administrations, accusing other administrations of cover-ups. But they say that he is passing the buck on this, and they say in this statement they're asking him who the officials are in these previous administrations who deemed any of those 302 interview reports not credible, and they want to know from Patel, Del, why he has not read those reports and why he has not conducted interviews himself.
Our national correspondent Alex Miller live for us in New York. Alex, as always, thank you. Today, the House passed a short-term spending bill trying to avoid a government shutdown. Then came the Senate. At issue, the risk of health insurance premiums skyrocketing, and as they say, that's where the battle lines have been drawn. Our congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed reports on how this issue is playing out in the funding fight.
As lawmakers continue to work behind the scenes on a comprehensive government funding solution, another high-stakes showdown is brewing, which could have massive impacts on your wallet. Expanded Affordable Care Act subsidies are slated to expire at the end of this year, and Democrats are sounding the alarm, looking for any way for Congress and the Trump administration to leave the expanded subsidies in place. Americans who obtain insurance through their state's insurance marketplace or exchange will see the most drastic changes first. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, if the expanded subsidies, which originally took effect in 2021, expire this year, Americans could see their premiums spike anywhere from 75% or more on average, depending on where they live. While Republicans and the Trump administration haven't ruled out acting to extend the subsidies, they have ruled out extending them as part of the annual government funding negotiations. Democrats on Capitol Hill pushing to include a permanent extension as part of any government funding solution.
So let's make a deal. Let's talk about a way to help keep people's costs down for their health care. Because the more expensive it becomes, more people will get off of their health care, and the more people get off of health care, the more everybody else's premiums go up. Some Republicans are saying, well, we don't want to give premium tax credits to people that are making $600,000 a year. Okay, that sounds reasonable to me. Let's negotiate.
According to an independent analysis by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, if the expanded subsidies expire, 4.2 million people would lose their health care coverage over the next decade. But if they're extended, 3.8 million more people will gain insurance coverage. If the government does shut down this year, it could mean furloughs for millions of government employees or the requirement that some work without pay indefinitely. At this point, lawmakers are still trying to iron out a comprehensive solution for 2026 funding. Whether that includes funding for the Affordable Care Act remains an open question. Nathaniel Reed, Scripps News Group, Washington.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
The CDC Vaccine Advisory Panel voting to change recommendations for several vaccines. I'm Maura Barrett. Coming up, what this means for patients looking to get vaccinated.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen. Let's jump right back into our rundown of the day's top stories.
Former Florida Congressman Mike Waltz will be the next U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, confirmed by the Senate today along party lines. Less clear whether he will participate in the UN General Assembly in New York City next week. President Trump appointing Waltz to the post after he removed him as his national security advisor back in May. You may recall that Waltz mistakenly added a journalist to a private chat on the Signal app that included several top officials, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. The highly anticipated Vaccine Advisory Panel's two-day meeting is shaping up, let's just say, differently than expected. For starters, the committee chair opened up today's meeting saying, quote, "We are rookies." Second, they're backing off from a proposed change in vaccine schedules for hepatitis B. Scripps News national correspondent and our business and tech correspondent, Maura Barrett, has the difficult task of following this meeting. And I say difficult because even the members themselves are confused. One yesterday saying he doesn't understand what they would be voting for. So, Maura, let me ask you the question. What's going on?
Chaotic, confused. There's a plethora of adjectives you could use to describe how these meetings ended up over the last 2 days. The panel finally just closing out on their vote around the COVID vaccine. They ultimately voted today saying that basically the COVID vaccination will be left up to individual decisions. But for anyone under the age of 64, they did advise that basically they're trying to say that only people who are, higher risk of getting COVID realistically should get the vaccine. But again, they're leaving it up to individual decisions. The biggest takeaway from today's vote lied in the vote against a requirement for a prescription. So that was something that was up in the air, especially around the COVID vaccine, and something they were considering in terms of that. And this will be a good thing because it'll make it a lot easier for people to get the vaccine now that they don't need to go and get a prescription. But ultimately, they were also discussing hepatitis B, as you mentioned, as well as the MMRV vaccine, which tackles measles, mumps, and chickenpox. And we talked about the vote that they made on MMRV yesterday, saying that they're adjusting that age recommendation for kids to start getting it no earlier than the age of 4. Previously, the guidance was to start at 12 months. So that was significant. But then this morning, they walked back the vote about whether public insurers should cover that regardless of the age. They also were supposed to vote yesterday on hepatitis B. They pushed that to today. And then to open up the meeting today, they said, actually, we're going to table it for right now. There's not enough information. And so they're keeping the hepatitis B recommendations as they stand. But to your point about the rookie comment, the chair said the quiet part out loud. Remember, these advisory panel members, 5 of them recently were just added this week to the panel by HHS Secretary RFK Jr. himself. And so this was a lot of their first times or even their second time doing one of these meetings. And it was very apparent in going through the vote, going through the discussion, that a lot of the members didn't even understand the text on which they were voting on. So it doesn't bode well in terms of the conversation we've been having around trust in the CDC, in these doctors, these PhDs, all of this expertise apparently still not seeming to follow what they're actually deciding on. And this impacts all of the American population looking to get vaccinated, Del.
You know, Mara, this is one of the things that everybody feared was the confusion and the chaos that you're talking about. One reason the advisory panel's decision is so important has to do with what insurance decides to cover for things like the flu shot and also the COVID shot. Did they get that sorted out?
Yes, so they did discuss this specifically, especially when it comes to COVID, because they're saying that it's ultimately up to the individual decision. They don't have to get prescriptions. That recommendation leaves it open for insurers, public or private, to cover it at no cost for the individual. So that's the good news there, because out-of-pocket costs for these types of vaccines are a lot. But depending on what they decide to do in terms of hepatitis B and the MMRV vaccine, given that they adjusted the language for that, that will impact when it comes to those public insurers, people that get their insurance through Medicare or the Vaccine for Children program. There was a statement from the trade group that represents a bunch of the private insurers, so Independence Blue Cross, Kaiser, Cigna, for example. They had said that they're going to continue covering vaccines regardless of how yesterday and today's meeting shook out. The big impact is going to be for Medicare and that Children's for the Vaccines for Children program that I was discussing. Now, it is important to note that these recommendations need to then be reviewed and adopted by the CDC before it's official, though that's likely to happen. That's just the next step in the process, Del.
Our business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett for us. Mara, as always, thank you very much.
We'll be right back to continue our rundown of today's top stories on Today As It Happened. Welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News debrief of our top stories of the day. So let's jump right back in.
Protesters gathering outside Jimmy Kimmel's Hollywood studios again, upset after ABC announced it is pulling him off the air indefinitely. Follows comments Kimmel made during Monday's show about the man suspected of killing Charlie Kirk. Yesterday, President Trump suggesting that networks who were critical of his administration could have their broadcast licenses pulled.
I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I got 97% negative, and yet I won it easily. I won all 7 swing states, popular, but won everything. And if they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away.
Last night, other late-night comics reacting to ABC's decision to pull Kimmel off the air.
Yesterday, after threats from Trump's FCC chair, ABC yanked Kimmel off the air indefinitely. That is blatant censorship.
To be honest with you all, I don't know what's going on, and no one does. But I do know Jimmy Kimmel, and he's a decent, funny, and loving guy, and I hope he comes back.
Kimmel has not publicly responded to this latest move. A federal judge in Florida tossing out President Trump's $15 billion defamation lawsuit against the New York Times. The judge saying the 85-page lawsuit was, quote, tedious and burdensome and decidedly improper and impermissible. He goes on to say that a complaint is not meant to be a megaphone for public relations. He gave Trump's team 28 days to refile it and says it must be less than 40 pages long. Trump sued the New York Times over an article that focused on his finances. The president holding court inside the Oval Office on a variety of topics. And I take you live now to the Oval Office.
Any questions, Jeff?
Your call with Your call this morning with President
It was great. I had a great call with President Xi, and as you know, he approved the TikTok deal, and we're in the process. We have some great investors, some of the biggest in the world, American investors, great people, and we look forward to getting that deal closed.
Is it fully approved? The Chinese statements didn't necessarily
Well,
indicate that.
I think so. I mean, when you say fully approved, I don't know what that means. We have to get it signed. I guess there could be a formality. I found his word to be very good. President Xi and I had a long talk. We talked for almost 2 hours, and started at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I think it was a very good talk. We talked about trade, we talked about war, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about Russia, Ukraine, obviously, and Gaza. Talked about a lot of subjects. It was a long call, it was a good call. We have a very good relationship. But the TikTok deal is well on its way, as you know, and the investors are getting ready. And I think China wanted to see it stay open, too. They wanted to see it. And I can tell you the young people in our country wanted to see it stay open very badly because, and if you take a look at my numbers, no Republican has ever done anything like we did. We got massive numbers of youth vote. And by the way, helped very much by Charlie Kirk. So Charlie was very much in favor of TikTok. He liked TikTok. And he said, you know, you should use it. And other people said that too, and I used it, and I don't know if I have I think I set records. I looked at numbers that are phenomenal. We'll pass them out to you. And it had probably a pretty big effect on the election because we won the election by a lot. So we are at a situation where in a little while, meaning a number of days, we'll probably, I don't know if you can make a deal with these people. I think these people are crazy. You know, again, anybody wants open borders and don't want to fight. They don't want to fight crime. They hate to fight crime. And in Chicago, last weekend, you had 11 people killed, murdered, and you had 28 shot. And those numbers have been pretty consistent all throughout a period of time, whether it was 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, 11 people, 12 people killed, murdered. And they don't want to spend money to fight crime. And it's not even much money, relatively speaking. It's very little. But we're going there anyway. It doesn't make any difference. We're going to Chicago. We're going to Memphis next. And we're going to clean up the crime in the cities because we have to do that. Okay?
Mr. President, with this deal today, are you confident that the CCP won't be exerting control over TikTok?
We're going to have a very tight control. And look, it's an amazing thing that's been created. There's tremendous value with TikTok. And I'm a little prejudiced because I frankly did so well on it. You know, it got me numbers that nobody's ever even heard of before. So a lot of people want it. The young people of this country want it badly. The parents of those young people want it badly. And so we were able to work out a deal with China. And it's a very good deal for us. I hope it's a good deal for them.
Would you be confident in a deal, or would you accept a deal where China controls the algorithm of TikTok?
Well, it's all being worked out. We're going to have very good control. We have these are American investors, all of them. And they all love our country. They're all very well-known people, very famous people, actually, financially. And they'll have control of it.
Mr. President,
I want to thank President Xi because he was a gentleman, and we've just had a good relationship. And we wanted a lot of people in this country wanted to be open.
Thank you for joining us this evening for Today As It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen. Have a great Friday night and an absolutely lovely weekend.